comes from the letter of 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. Listen so that by faith you may hear God's word for you this morning. Rid yourselves therefore of all malice and all guile, insincerity, envy, and all slander. Like newborn infants, long for the pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow into salvation. If indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good, come to him a living stone, though rejected by mortals, yet chosen and precious in God's sight. And like living stones, let yourselves be built into a spiritual house, to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For it stands in Scripture, see, I am laying in Zion a stone, a cornerstone chosen and precious, and whoever believes in him will not be put to shame. To you then who believe, he is precious, but for those who do not believe, the stone that the builders rejected has become the very head of the corner, and a stone that makes them stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the word, as they were destined to do. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, in order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. May we share a word of prayer together. Holy One, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of all our hearts, be pleasing to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Finding your people sounds easy enough. Not so easy sometimes, maybe easier at other times, but how we find the people that gives us the courage, the inspiration, the hope, the encouragement to be the people that God knows we can be. For some, finding friendship is happenstance. There's a young man that's working on a farm for his uncle and his aunt, has dreams of going out and doing miraculous things in the galaxy. But out of loyalty, he stays with his aunt and uncle, working on the farm, helping with moisture evaporators and all those fun things you find on the planet of Tatooine. Luke has an idea of dreams of doing remarkable things, making a difference in the world. And yet by himself, he feels alone. He feels trapped. He feels like everything he wants to do, he can't do because he doesn't have the right people giving him the right kind of encouragement. And then we have a young woman that's called a princess. She is actually the daughter of a former head of a planet, Naboo. She doesn't know that. She is raised by adoptive parents, and he himself, the father of that adoptive father, is a senator of another planet. And so she kind of has a little bit of royalty in her background, and she is in it for the fight to fight against the Empire. Her desire to do everything she can with every waking fiber of her being for the Empire to go down and for the rise of the good, the celebration of humanity to be made available to any person in the galaxy that wants it. And then there's this kind of scruffy-looking nerf herder at a bar in Mos Eisley Cantina on the planet of Tatooine, and he is looking for the next job. He is looking for the next bundle of money he can make to get him past to the next gig he can get, making money to get him to the next gig. And he's got his good companion Chewbacca with him, and they're kind of ready for anything but cautious of any danger that might come. He got a bounty on his head. He's got money he needs to earn to kind of pay off his old debts. And then there's these two droids, C-3PO and R2-D2, and they are pretty much at the mercy of whoever is in charge of them at the time. And one thing I love about droids in the Star Wars saga is, other than C-3PO that speaks English, most of the droids just make beeps and noises, and you don't know what they're saying, but you actually do know what they're saying. The script writing is so good. The characters that have dialogue with these droids, it's almost like you know exactly what the droids have been talking about. But these droids, whether we know it or not, are integral parts to any person or being success in the Star Wars legacy and saga that unfolds. So you have this young farm boy, a princess, a scoundrel and smuggler, and 2 droids. And these 5 characters really have nothing in common, so we think. And yet the storyline gradually brings these 5 storylines in and weaves them together, and they get connected to one another. Initially by a sense of purpose. Some of it is they're brought together by money, or they're trying to save someone, but they all are kind of bound together at some point. And what they do not know, when their lives become intertwined in that first movie, how intertwined those relationships will be in terms of friendships and connections that will be so helpful for them down the line. One of the things we know about friendships is we want friendships to mean something to us. We want relationships that are not just casual there for my need. We want friendships to have some depth to them. Seth Rogen writes a book called Tribes and says that every human being finds their little tribes or their groups to connect with. Some of them are formal, some of them are informal. Some people's tribes is their place of work. A tribe might be a church, might be a community organization, it might be an interest group. It's amazing how easy you can find tribes. I mean, finding tribes maybe in the past versus now, maybe a little harder to find tribes in the past in terms of groups of people to connect with. But Seth says as the internet came on board, the ability for people to find people around affinity or interest or group or some kind of connection or age, you can just type in, I would like to find a group that likes to meet about Star Wars, and Google will say, well, you've got a group 10 miles from you. I mean, it's just amazing how quickly the internet can find people you like and try to get connected to them. Tribes or groups of people become instrumental to us. And we think about it, there's a part of gathering people around so that we can be our best self. We need people around to encourage us, to support us, to have pats on the back, a hug when you need it, someone that can be a kind of a dialogue person for you. You need those special people in your life to help you be the best person you can be. And yet also friendships are there, so those friendships have a larger purpose than just individual progression. Friendships oftentimes have an opportunity to move us to places we would not have gone by ourselves. And we need that circle of people to help us move to places we would not have gone otherwise. So in the first 3 films, we have Luke, Han, Chewie, Princess Leia, C-3PO, and R2-D2. And we get to follow them for 3 movies. I mean, they are fast and furious friends, and they go through all kinds of adventures, and they would not have gone through those adventures without each other. About the time you think everyone's at their wits' end and something's going to fail or fall through, they help each other out. In the opening film, Luke is kind of toward the end of the film, he's kind of frustrated with his new companion, Han Solo. Han Solo was in it to get a reward. He was in it to get his money and pay off his debts and carry on to the next job. And so when they're getting ready to fight against the evil Death Star, Han goes, I don't want to be a part of that, and is in the process of leaving the group behind. So Luke and the other fighters go attack the Death Star to try to destroy the evil empire and the Death Star. And it gets down to the last few minutes of the film, and what they're trying to do is shoot these 2 little torpedoes down this exhaust pipe, and if they do that, it somehow is going to destroy the Death Star. There's this little kink in the system. There's a little weakness of the Death Star. Several fighters are trying to get in there. They got close. One got real close, hit the edge of the exhaust pipe, didn't quite go in, and Luke's getting closer and closer. He's getting close to be able to shoot his shot, but the infamous Darth Vader is getting closer and closer, about ready to take out Luke's ship. He's literally about ready to press the button and hit the button and take out Luke's ship, and Luke's about to go until you hear this, woohoo! And Han Solo zips in on his Millennium Falcon, hits a shot down at Darth Vader's ship, hits the edge of the tail of the ship, and Darth Vader's ship kind of spins out, and Luke's able to continue down the channel of this Death Star, hit his torpedoes, goes down the exhaust pipe, and the Death Star explodes. About the time you think you don't need someone is the time you need them the most. Or you think you've given up on someone, they've not given up on you. So finding friends is not necessarily an easy thing, but sometimes friends come at us in ways we least expect. Then the last three films, 7, 8, and 9, the cluster of friends that are also the random group of people that find each other. One is Rey, who is on the planet of Jakku, and Rey's simple desire, she just wants her parents to come home. She wants her family restored again. And she's doing everything she can to survive on the planet, hoping that her parents will return, not ever knowing if that will ever happen. There's this little scene where she goes back to the little humble place where she's staying. She has a little device and she makes a mark on a piece of metal. She's like tracking the days of how long she's been away from the people that she loves the most. And she doesn't want to leave the planet because if she leaves the planet and her parents come back, she'll miss out on that opportunity. Well, as that life is happening, Poe Dameron flies in, who's part of the rebellion, flies in. There is a wise man that has a piece of information about the missing Luke Skywalker. And Poe Dameron wants this important information on this little piece of equipment that's going to project where Luke Skywalker might just be located. And Poe Dameron gets stuck on the planet because the ship gets blown up by the evil dark side and those that don't want him to receive this information. And then there is the other person of a stormtrooper that no longer wants to be a stormtrooper. He has no name. He has a letter and numbers. And that's how he's identified, is F and his numbers. And he's at a scene where he's supposed to be shooting innocent lives. And he's looking at those people, and he holds his gun in his hand, and he realizes, I can't do this anymore. And he decides to defect and leave being a stormtrooper. And his goal is simply just escape. He's not wanting to get to the good side. He's not wanting to be part of the rebellion. He just wants to get as far away from the First Order, which is what's kind of the next version of the Empire. He wants to get as far away from the First Order as he can. That's his whole goal. Get me as far away as possible. And Poe has got this droid named BB-8. And so Rey, Finn, Poe, and BB-8 become kind of the next cluster of friends. Again, a random collection of 4 characters that get bound together. And for 3 films, we kind of watch these friendships kind of evolve and grow through episodes 7, 8, and 9. And one of the things we learn through the Star Wars world, there's 2 important lessons that come out of these friendships that seem to be thrown together under unusual circumstances. The first lesson that Star Wars talks about is friendship and loyalty. One of the things we find through the first grouping of friends and the second grouping of friends is this loyalty they have to one another. And it's a growing loyalty. They kind of learn about each other and who they are and how they might work together, and then they become dependent upon each other to accomplish the larger goals they want to accomplish. And so there's a little bit of that loyalty and connection they have with one another that makes these films endearing, because we follow these unknowns. That's one of the things that George Lucas was really good at in films, is casting films with people we really don't know, so we have to grow to learn those friendships too. Instead of getting all the known quantities of actors and actresses out there, find people that are not well known yet, so we get to know them as they grow into their roles in the film, as we get to know them in some way. The other part of the Star Wars saga that is important is the theme of diversity and acceptance. And to me, this is a real important theme we find throughout the film, is the variety of characters and species of people you get in the Star Wars world is really fascinating to me. You kind of get a glimpse of it in the opening story, the opening A New Hope, when you go to the Mos Eisley Cantina, and there's all these crazy characters that represent different species that are out there. And it seems though when you're fighting for the good side, or fighting for the good side of the Force, what you see is this tapestry of people and beings and creatures from all over the galaxy. And there's this celebration of this diversity. There's this acceptance of this great diversity of all these people, of all these resources. They all have unique things to add to the mix. I think of this little character, Babu Frick, that I had. He's in episode 9, and this little bitty guy, he's about that tall in the movie. He's a little bitty guy. He's accepted for these gifts of working with droids, and he's the only one that can solve their problem at the time, and they celebrate who he is and what he can accomplish in the film. And that's a contrast where if you're associated with the dark side or the Empire or the First Order, they want to cancel out diversity. They want to cancel out uniqueness. They want to cancel out creativity. They don't want you to even know who the people are. So they have you put on helmets like this one in the Clone Wars, or a stormtrooper helmet. They put you have these helmets on so it takes away the uniqueness of someone, so all you see is the same thing. This person is there, or this being is there, this clone is there to follow orders and do what's being told. You're not told to think, you're just called to do. And if you don't follow orders, you get in trouble. Sounds kind of similar how people behave in terms of using fear to get what you want versus celebrating the diversity and the equity and the inclusion that humanity really is. And Star Wars celebrates friendship and loyalty and acceptance and diversity, these themes that are endearing to us, and using the motif of space and galaxies to do it. But what a wonderful way to take these universal themes, and in many ways, spiritual Christian themes, and bring them alive in a different kind of format than we might see. And it brings people together that otherwise would have not thought of themselves that they would go together. Virginia White has written a book called Holy Friendships, and she says that holy friendships are formed sometimes around purpose, but sometimes holy friendships are found in the places we least expected them. And I think in many ways, like in the Star Wars films, that most of the best friendships we encounter in those films happen when they least expect it. The person surprises them, and they find a connection to one another, and they find support from one another, and then they depend on one another to accomplish something greater. If you're part of fighting for good in the Star Wars saga, your purpose is not about self-gratification. It's not about improving oneself. It's about a larger cause. If you're part of the dark side or the Empire or the First Order, your main purpose is to maintain control, to maintain power, and to maintain your manipulation over other people. And so how we design our friendships, what friendships help us thrive, help us become the best of who we are. So sometimes friendships happen by circumstance. Sometimes friendships happen by intention. In 1860, there were 4 gentlemen waiting on May 18th of 1860 to determine who was going to be the winner. There was Lincoln, Seward, Chase, and Bates. All 4 of them were up for the nomination of the Republican Party to be the representative of the Republican Party for the presidential race, to be the 14th president. On that night, all 4 of them did not know at that time who was going to be selected as the nominee of the Republican Party. They soon were discovered that Abraham Lincoln was going to win that nomination for the Republican Party in 1860. Seward, Chase, and Bates, all 3, it said, were dismayed and angry that Abraham Lincoln won that nomination. The other 3 felt they were more privileged, more experienced, had more capabilities to be president than Abraham Lincoln. One of the things that Abraham Lincoln did that was kind of out of character at the time was after he won the presidency and began to put together his cabinet, he began putting together people that would help him accomplish something not for him, but for a larger cause. There were 6 major cabinet members. 3 of them were the 3 people he went up against in the Republican National Convention. Seward, Chase, and Bates all got positions under him in his cabinet. Not only did he do that, he found 3 Democrats. He also had powers of significance to bring them onto his cabinet. Had the most diverse, unique cabinet. One of the things we learn about Abraham Lincoln is formulating his cabinet for his presidency was his greatest gift was collaboration, was bringing people together who had gifts. Rather than Abraham Lincoln trying to say, I've got all the knowledge, I've got all the wisdom, who are the people out there who have these great gifts that will help us forward what it means to be living in connection to one another? The author of the book that writes about this time period is called Team of Rivals, which I thought was an interesting title of the book. Team of Rivals is Abraham Lincoln took the people that were considered his rivals and brought them in. You know, I've always learned when it comes to difficult conversations, it's better to have a conversation in planned spaces versus unplanned spaces. I'd rather in a church world have a conversation during a meeting rather than having out in the parking lot any day of the week. Abraham Lincoln knew that if you're going to have the right conversations about the health and forwarding the country, dealing with slavery and other issues of his day, I want all the key players in the room that we can shape the direction of our people in a positive way. Interesting enough, Abraham Lincoln and Seward became almost best friends. His bitter rival, they became best friends through that process. How we put friendships around us matter. Sometimes friendships just come upon us. We move to Kansas City and you learn new friends. You just kind of figure it out. Or you find things you believe in, things that are important to you, causes, social issues that you would die on the mat to make sure we move along and move forward for greater health and vitality for people in our country, our communities, our world. How we shape friendships around our life become really critical to us. I've known, at least for the last 5 or 6 months, I've had more than once, whether it be a member or a visitor that's come in, they've said, when I come to church on Sunday mornings, the phrase is, I feel like I found my people. I found people that have a similar, at least a value system, a similar kind of feeling of DNA within my soul, a sense that when I come here, it emboldens who I am, it makes me a better person. And whether you know it or not, if this place makes you feel like a better person, at the same time, you're making other people feel as though they are better people. It's not just only a benefit to you, you're a benefit to others when we have that collective resource to one another. Whether you're Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Finn, Rey, C-3PO, BB-8, these people are by themselves, we're just individuals. But as a friendship cohort, they ran up against all kinds of odds and they defeated them every time. About the time they said, I guess we have to give up, was about time those friendships were strengthened in ways that helped them become something better than they were by themselves. You may think, what does this have to do with, I read 1 Peter a long time ago. What does that have to do with 1 Peter? This letter that was written over 2,000 years ago was written to a group of communities, of faith communities that were followers of Jesus, followers of the way. They were not called Christians yet, followers of the way. Now the location of 1 Peter, the destination of this letter was in biblical world, I'm sure everyone knows their biblical geography well, it was Asia Minor. You know exactly where that is. Today's geography, that would be Turkey. And so this letter's designated audience is to small little faith communities in Turkey. And those communities felt isolated. They felt like outsiders in 2 ways. One, they were a part of this followers of the way movement, but they were so far out on the edge geographically from where the center of that movement was, they felt like they weren't connected. They felt like outsiders of their own tradition. And then within the communities in which they lived, the villages and towns they lived, they felt like outsiders there because things they believed were not what others in their community believed. This letter was designed to give them a sense of, you are not alone, you have friends. And not only do you have friends, but you are a key part of this whole movement of what it means to follow and believe in Jesus. One of my favorite lines in this passage is right toward the end, toward verse 10. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. When these people receive this letter, they recognize we are not outsiders. We are part of this movement. We are part of something significant. I have a role. You have a role. We have a role. We can all do these things together. And the beauty of this kind of letter is like today we send a text or an email. We get something to someone really quick. This is like Pony Express days. And so someone had to send this letter and be an emissary to those communities and say, I've got a letter for your community. I want to read it to you in worship. And that letter writer or that letter carrier would come to that community. They would have worship. He would open up his letter and he would talk about these words. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. The author of 1 Peter was trying to remind the church that felt like they were outsiders and saying, you are our people. You are part of us, and we are a part of you. Whether we're coming to worship on a Sunday morning, or we're going out to our places of work, or we're going to places where we volunteer, or we go to places where we are doing activism and engaging in justice for those that need support and allyship in the community. One of the things we do know, we need to be reminded of when we come to places like this, who are our people that we can trust and depend on so that I can become the best version of myself, that we can become the best version of ourselves. It is incumbent upon us as people of faith not to think of this thing as this solo journey. What do I believe? What can I do? We have to take the I out of it. If we can find our people, we will find our way. So be it.